Here we go again. They can't stop. I keep telling y'all they cannot stop. A'ja Wilson wins Time Athlete of the Year. And rather than talking about herself, what does she want to do? She wants to down Caitlin Clark. She wants to downplay the impact and disrespect CC and the fans. And it just...
The WNBA just crowned A'ja Wilson again, and instead of soaking it all in, she's out here throwing shade at Caitlin Clark. Time Magazine's 2025 Athlete of the Year couldn't resist bringing up the league's biggest draw during what should have been her victory lap. She's got the awards stacking up, the records falling, but something's clearly eating at her. When you've literally won everything there is to win, why spend your moment of glory taking shots at someone else? What do you does constantly talking about your achievements scream confidence, or does it prove the exact opposite? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
Get into today. A'ja Wilson, congratulations, won Time Athlete of the Year. Now, this would have been a great moment for A'ja Wilson to talk about her accomplishments, etc. But what did A'ja Wilson want to do? She wanted to take shots. She wanted to fire off.
So A'ja Wilson just became Time Magazine's 2025 Athlete of the Year. Big deal, right? Championship ring, MVP trophy, Defensive Player of the Year, scoring title, she collected them all like Infinity Stones. In fact, she literally compared herself to Thanos. This year, I collected everything, she said during her interview in some fancy New York City hotel room. Real humble stuff. The accolades are impressive. No question about it. She's the first player in WNBA or NBA history to win a championship, claim the scoring title, and be named Finals MVP, League MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. That's genuinely remarkable. She hit 5,000 career points faster than anyone else. Her third championship, her fourth MVP, her second Finals MVP, the list goes on and on.
So then we dive deep into it, and it seems like there's some paragraphs from this article that put down Caitlin Clark in order to prop up A'ja, which is crazy because if you guys remember, Caitlin Clark was Time's Sportsperson of the Year.
But here's where it gets interesting. During what should have been her moment, her big celebration of being recognized as the best athlete in women's basketball, she couldn't help herself. The interview shifted to Caitlin Clark, and suddenly we're talking about toxic, racially divisive narratives. Time Magazine, with their obvious political agenda, decided this was the perfect moment to address the supposed controversy around Caitlin's emergence into the league. According to the article, there's this narrative that Caitlin Clark was almost singularly responsible for salvaging a league whose foundation had been built by a mostly black player base, and A'ja had thoughts about that. She said it wasn't a hit at her because she's gonna do her regardless. She's gonna win MVP, win gold medals, and nobody can shake her resume. But then she added that the history was erased for a minute, and she didn't like that because so many women went through difficult things to build the league.
Time. In 2024, Caitlin Clark's rookie season helped the WNBA hit milestone TV and attendance figures, but Clark's emergence created a toxic, racially divisive narrative that she was almost singularly responsible for salvaging a league whose foundation had been built by mostly black player base. I'm going to stop right there because, like I said, Caitlin Clark was Time Sportsperson of the Year last year, and in that article, she was asked multiple times about these narratives around Caitlin and the racial divide that happens in America, and specifically around women's basketball. It has gotten so insane, and she has denounced it so many times. She said it in the Times article that she doesn't want her name to be used for these different negative and divisive things that it's used for, and the fact that Time Magazine named her Sportsperson of the Year in 2024, and then in 2025 turn around and put something like this in an article, by the way, you guys, that is supposed to prop up A'ja.
Let's pause right there. This is A'ja's moment to shine. If you're truly secure in who you are and what you've accomplished, why are you spending any portion of your Time Magazine Athlete of the Year interview talking about someone else? Why are you bringing up Caitlin Clark when this is supposed to be about celebrating you? The pattern here is undeniable. A'ja Wilson is insecure. Now people will hear that and immediately say, are you kidding? She's the most confident person ever. She tells everyone what she can do, what she's done, what she's accomplished. But that's exactly the point. Truly confident people don't need to constantly remind everyone of their achievements. Let's talk about what real confidence looks like. Caitlin Clark came into the WNBA with a skill set that's genuinely rare in women's basketball. The range on her shot is something you typically don't see. The passing ability is elite. People tuned in not just because of what she'd already done in college, but because they wanted to see what she'd do next. There's a magnetism there that draws people in, something even coaches have mentioned after working with her.
I feel like I always have had really good perspective on everything that's kind of happened in my life, whether that's been good, whether that's been bad. And then obviously coming to the WNBA, like I've said, I feel like I've earned every single thing that's happened to me over the course of my career. But also, I grew up a fan of this league from a very young age. Like, my favorite player was Maya Moore. Like, I know what this league was about. And like I said, like, it's only been around 25 plus years. So I know there's been so many amazing black women that have been in this league, and continuing to uplift them, I think, is very important. And that's something I'm very aware of. And like I said, like, I try to just be real and authentic and, you know, share my truth. And I think that's very easy for me. Like, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. And that's kind of been how it is.
When Caitlin does interviews, she represents her team and the league well. She doesn't embarrass anyone. She handles the spotlight with grace. And here's the kicker, you will never find footage of Caitlin Clark proclaiming herself the GOAT. You won't see her spending interview time tearing down other players or diminishing their accomplishments. She doesn't defend herself against the constant attacks and criticism she faces. That takes an incredible amount of confidence and self-discipline. Aja, on the other hand, told Time magazine, "I've been the GOAT since 1996 in my house, and I think I'm on my way there. I'm making it real hard for people to chase after me." She also said, "I don't really talk much, I kinda let my game do it. This was my biggest moment of doing it because no one's ever done what I've done, and I think people really needed to understand that." That's a lot of self-promotion for someone who claims to let their game do the talking. The contradiction is glaring. When you truly let your game speak, you don't need to spend interviews telling everyone how great you are and how nobody else has done what you've done. But the real issue isn't just the self-promotion, it's the pattern of trying to diminish others. Remember when Caitlin first entered the league and Aja started talking about privilege? She essentially dismissed the hard work, the talent, the natural gifts that Caitlin possesses by attributing her success to privilege. She even said something similar to a teammate once about understanding their privilege. Who does that? Who looks at someone's accomplishments and decides the reason they succeeded is privilege, not dedication and skill? It's one thing to be proud of what you've accomplished. We all do that to some degree. It's human nature. But when it becomes a pattern of constantly inserting yourself into conversations, propping yourself up while simultaneously pulling others down, that's when it crosses the line from healthy confidence into insecurity and jealousy. The truth is, Aja's accolades don't bring her what Caitlin Clark already has naturally. Caitlin has the on-court game that's only going to improve as she continues in the league. She has the ability to connect with fans in a way that creates genuine adoration. People line up for her autograph. They tune in specifically to watch her play. She brings something to the sport that transcends statistics. Aja can hit that elbow shot after setting what looks like an illegal screen to create space, but that's another discussion. She can do the things that have brought her success, but she doesn't have that unique quality that makes people who don't even typically watch women's basketball suddenly interested. Caitlin has that, and it clearly bothers Aja. The irony is thick here. Time magazine gives you this massive platform, recognizes you as the athlete of the year, and instead of purely celebrating your achievements and honoring the women who came before you without tearing down your contemporaries, you use the moment to address perceived slights and make sure everyone knows that Caitlin's attention isn't deserved the way yours is. This speaks to something bigger than basketball. We live in a culture that tells us achievements, money, and accolades will make us happy and secure. Aja Wilson is proof that's not true. You can have every award, every record, every championship, and still feel like you don't measure up. You can still feel the need to tear someone else down to build yourself up. When you're truly confident and secure in who you are, you don't need to do that. You can celebrate others' success without feeling threatened. You can acknowledge that someone brings something different to the sport without feeling like it diminishes your contributions. You can let your actual game and character speak, rather than constantly telling everyone how great you are. The contrast between Aja and Caitlin couldn't be more stark. One player constantly talks about being the GOAT, about collecting everything like Thanos, about how nobody can touch their resume. The other player shows up, plays at an elite level, handles media responsibilities with class, and doesn't feel the need to defend herself or proclaim her greatness. One is exhausting to listen to, the other is refreshing. Now let's address the elephant in the room that Time magazine decided to drag into this. The article tried to pin toxicity and racial divisiveness on Caitlin Clark's emergence into the league. That's absurd. Caitlin didn't create toxicity. She showed up and played basketball at an extraordinary level. The toxicity came from players and fans who couldn't handle that a certain player was getting attention and decided to attribute it to race rather than skill and marketability. When Aja says the history was erased for a minute and she didn't like it, what she's really saying is she didn't like that Caitlin got attention. But here's the thing, acknowledging Caitlin's impact doesn't erase history. It doesn't diminish what previous players accomplished. The WNBA has been around for years with talented players, but it struggled to gain mainstream attention. Caitlin brought eyeballs to the sport. That's not erasure, that's growth. I just said it wasn't a hit at me because I'm going to do me regardless. But it clearly was a hit at her. Otherwise, why bring it up during your Time magazine interview? If you're truly unaffected, you don't spend your victory lap addressing it. You just celebrate your achievements and keep moving forward. The pattern of insecurity extends beyond just this interview. It's been consistent throughout her interactions regarding Caitlin. When someone new comes in and immediately captures the attention and admiration that you've been working for years to achieve, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy. That's human. But how you handle those feelings determines your character. You can either recognize that different players bring different things to the sport, that there's room for multiple stars, and that someone else's shine doesn't dim yours, or you can spend your time trying to convince everyone that you're the real star, and the other person only gets attention because of unfair advantages. Aja has consistently chosen the latter approach. The really frustrating part is that Aja has legitimate accomplishments worth celebrating on their own merit. She doesn't need to tear anyone down. She could have done an entire Time magazine interview talking about her journey, her growth, her championships, and what it means for the sport without ever mentioning Caitlin Clark, except maybe to say something like, "It's great to see the league getting more attention from multiple stars contributing in different ways." Instead, we got comparisons, complaints about narratives, and thinly veiled shots at a player who, by the way, handles constant criticism and physical play with remarkable composure. Caitlin gets knocked around on the court, faces endless scrutiny off it, and still shows up and performs. She doesn't make excuses. She doesn't blame others. She just plays. That's the difference between confidence and insecurity. Confidence is quiet. It doesn't need constant validation or recognition. It doesn't need to diminish others to feel secure. Insecurity is loud. It constantly needs to remind you of achievements. It needs to make sure you know that someone else's success isn't really deserved. Aja Wilson is insecure. Her achievements are real. Her talent is legitimate, but internally she's struggling with the fact that having all the accolades doesn't automatically make you the most loved or most watched player. That eats at her, and it shows in these interviews and comments. This is actually a spiritual issue at its core. It's about what fulfills us and makes us secure. External achievements will never be enough if you're looking to them to validate your worth. You can win every award, break every record, and still feel empty if you haven't addressed the internal void. When you're secure in who you are beyond your achievements, you don't need to constantly prove yourself. You don't need to tear others down. You can genuinely celebrate their success without feeling threatened. You can acknowledge that they bring something valuable without feeling like it diminishes you. Caitlin Clark represents that security. She came into a league where many players resented her immediately. She faced physical play that bordered on dangerous. She dealt with constant criticism and analysis of everything she did. And through it all, she maintained her composure, didn't lash out, didn't make excuses, and didn't feel the need to proclaim herself the greatest. She let her game and her character speak. That's real confidence. That's real security. And it stands in stark contrast to someone who has every accolade possible, but still can't enjoy their moment without making sure everyone knows they're better than someone else. The WNBA should be big enough for multiple stars. The sport benefits when there are different players bringing different skills and personalities, but that requires players who are secure enough to celebrate each other rather than constantly competing for who deserves the most attention. Aja Wilson had a historically great season. She deserves recognition for that. But But using that recognition as a platform to take shots at another player reveals more about her insecurities than it does about Caitlin Clark's supposed privilege or undeserved attention. Champions don't need to tear others down. They can stand on their own accomplishments without comparison. A'ja Wilson's Time magazine interview revealed more than she probably intended. Real champions don't need to spend their victory lap explaining why they're better than someone else. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button and subscribe for more honest takes on sports and culture, because when the awards pile up but the insecurity shows through, somebody needs to call it out.